We have Dean Cafardi joining us as well. But we're all here to welcome you for this very special event where we have Professor Robert Taylor, who I have just heard so much about, who's a legend here at our law school, and we're so pleased. I've heard so much about him, in particular from Professor Bruce Ledewitz. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I'm now going to hand it over to our library director.
Thank you so very much, everyone, for being here. And let's see if I can find my notes. So, hello, everyone. Dean Barton, Dean Cafardi, Professor Taylor, Professor Ledewitz, esteemed members of our faculty and student body, and dear colleagues. This is a big day for our law school, and I dare say for the American Legal Academy, because of the magnitude of the scholarly collaboration at the heart of it, and because we, as a library here at Duquesne in Pittsburgh, have been able to report something that usually goes either unreported or is left for those engaging with the books involved in the process hundreds of years to. Let's look at this page from 1488. It's Justinian Codex. And as you see on the upper corner, there is something which says, I tried to translate it. So first of all, in Latin, or nobis robus facienda, or new goods to be done. Or if you go to or nobis rodus facienda, or new rods to be done. So huge difference. We didn't want to let anyone have that problem with the books that are at the heart. But what we did, we engaged in making sure that everything that was involved in their process, in their collaboration, is going to be reported and archived and disseminated. The principles in this ballet of the mind will talk for themselves. I will only tell you about the reporting process, the archival and the dissemination aspects. When I joined Duquesne, Bruce interviewed me and asked me about Bernard Lonergan. Luckily for me, he asked me in library terms, and I was able to answer that question. But I was intrigued because I knew nothing about Bernard Lonergan. So at that point, I realized that I have to start finagling Bruce. So to tell us about his dream of self-realization as a scholar. Step by step, Bruce held the promise of teaching what it takes to be a scholar. And this is what we have here. It is not a mere gift, and we're going to bring you to the collection of books. It's not a mere gift of books from two giants of Duquesne University. It is a gift of how to become a giant in one's field. So what did we do? We created book plates. So the book plates I'm going to show you in a second. So these are examples of book plates. The book plates created by Amy, our very own Amy, and to a smaller degree by myself, incorporate the conversations between Bruce and myself that started late in May of this year. And this is an example of what this particular book, and I have the book here, this particular book, the Talmud with English translation and commentary, meant to the two professors that were reading it. So people can find this explanation when they search our catalog or when they go to the books and they take the book, open it and see the book plate. In addition to left anything behind you is now digitized. So hopefully your handwriting is illegible.
It's not.
So this is all I had to say. Now we are going to let John Rago, Professor John Rago, tell us more because he is a friend of them.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, don't exaggerate.
First of all, I love this man and what he did for me and for all of us. I see my dean, Nick, I see Mark, I see Bruce, of course, and folks that I came up through the ranks with, and Annie knows these people really well. 41 years ago, I walked into room 203 and that guy was sitting in the front of the room. It was my first class. It was civil procedure, which is boring. And no, but I was scared to death. I walked in late for class he saw this out of the corner of his eye and he's talking, he says, and as Mr. Rago gets, I was the last one walking in. As Mr. Rago gets ready to see, we'll have him present the first case. Well, the sweat literally started. I sat next to my now best friend, Jimmy Catanzarite, who knew that I was nervous. I opened my books and it was my property notebook. I don't know what to do. I think I'm on another planet. Jimmy, he's backest to me. Jimmy slides his notebook over. I give the case and I know he knew that I got away with something. But he was my teacher then and he's my teacher now. He's one of the kindest men I've ever had in my life. And I'm grateful for that. And as a young faculty member, I had an experience working with wrongfully convicted individuals, one on death row, Kirk Bloodsworth. And I came away from the experience thinking, what happens when the truth goes down the drain? This guy goes to prison, the truth follows him. We've got to get back in the drains and get that back. Bob, how do we do that? Because we used to read together. And so Bob knew that, I mean, I'm not at the level of these two eggheads. Trust me when I tell you that. And I admire them. That's a respectful term. But I was struggling. I wanted to know, how can I help? I thought there was some algorithm to get a better result, better outcomes. Well, in fact, there wasn't. But I struggled with this concept of truth and freedom. And I had a conversation with Bob, and 2 days later, he sent me a note, a handwritten note. I typed it because his handwriting is horrible. But I typed it out, and I kept it for 30 years because it's part of my formation. I keep things that are special to me. And I just—
Hi, Bill. It's Jennifer Myers. How are you?
Vintage Bob. And by the way, he wrote it at my—
Good. Great. So great. I'm very excited for you both and for
Hello, Johannes. Our conversation on truth and freedom in the context of criminal justice reminds me that one cannot exist without the other. When innocents are sentenced to prison, freedom and truth are separated. Disorder and distrust follow because we know society's trust in our criminal justice system cannot long endure under these conditions. As you find your way through your challenges, I want to stress how important your efforts are and remind you of this. If we fail to learn from the lessons of these cases, we are doomed to fall back into the same errors, this being the easier path to follow rather than pursuing the difficult conquest of truth. The innocent will continue to suffer and chaos will follow. So here are a few of my thoughts on your pursuits of these truths. Among the many occupations that allow us to manifest and realize ourselves in this world, the unprejudiced search for truth is highest and most specifically human. Philosophers have recognized it for a long time, as is shown by Aristotle's famous definition, man is a rational animal. As a matter of fact, it is precisely because of this characteristic that man differs from other beings composing the universe. He appears in the world as a being capable of raising questions and reflecting. Inert matter does not ask questions about itself or its surroundings. A church pew, for instance, is what it is without being in the least concerned about what it is or has to be. Likewise, a mere animal does not raise questions. It lives and makes use of its inclinations and instincts without questioning itself concerning their object and value. Man, on the contrary, is capable of wondering, questioning, and reflecting. I know you're not interested in some abstract notion of truth, but concrete conditions of human truth. The pursuit of truth in many contexts is not just criminal, will always hover at the horizon of our desire for knowledge. Thank goodness for this. But truth, Johannes, is not something that is quite finished and possessed all at once. Be patient with yourself and with others. It is an infinitely complex and difficult task, but one well worth the undertaking. You can find truth in the familiar world around us, in positive science, in philosophy, and again in distinct truth that faith allows us to touch and cherish. I say this because faith is the essential tool for all of us who seek understanding. Onward, Johannes, happy wandering. I gotta tell you, son of a bitch hit the home run, didn't he? I'm not gracious like him. I wish I were half as gracious. But I owe so much to him and all of my colleagues, Nick Cafardi being among them, for giving me the chance to be here. And so thank you, Bob. And thank you, Bruce, too. One last note. Ledewitz tells me, this isn't about me, don't say anything. Well, I was going to swear, and I was told not to swear. That's nonsense. Bruce is For 45 years, these two guys get together and read on, and they read in German and Latin. I mean, I read comic books on Wednesday. These guys are remarkable. And when they come back and I can just get the crumbs that fall off their desk and think, wow, it's helped me and it's helped all of us. This is what colleagues do. For the younger members of the faculty, this is what you have to look forward to. And people like Richard, and they're here to help lead us. Because the school's yours now. It's ours, but we're in transition somewhat. And I'm just grateful to watch the whole movie. And I'm especially grateful to this guy for reaching into the woods and grabbing me. So thank you, Nick, for that. Okay, Bruce.
Okay, well, it's my job to introduce Robert, and I'm not going to introduce him by telling you about him. In the collection, we both have statements about our work together and about our work in the law. And I'm going to read to you from Robert's statement, and that will be, I think, the proper introduction. Bruce and I began our extraordinary romp through infinity, beginning in 1980, and it continues even now into this waning year of 2024. Currently, we do so on a weekly basis, but while at the law school, it was every day, 5 days a week. This infinity encompassed the social, political, spiritual, philosophical, aesthetic, psychological, as well as the scientific, technological. One can deduce from this that we both wish to return legal education to its humanistic foundations, from which it originally sprung in the enlightened minds of humanists such as Thomas Jefferson and our brilliant founding fathers, many of whom were exceptional readers and thinkers of capacious breadth and vision. So, of course, our journey has certainly shaped how we taught ourselves, as well as our students, concerning how to go about learning how to learn the law in the respective areas of law in which we specialize. The areas of law in which I taught were federal civil procedure, local government, philosophy of law, comparative law, law and religion, legal ethics, science and law at the Wecht Institute. And now allow me to suggest in bullet point form some of the many insights that emerged from my 34 years of learning and teaching the law. 1. Law had its primordial origins with the astronomers' observations of the nighttime sky, from which they learned the concept of order and how to establish the calendar, which operated somewhat as a statute-like instrument, telling authorities what to do and not do, and when, with respect to important religious and social affairs, as well as the vital times for the planting and harvesting of crops upon which civilization depended. Negligence here led to disastrous consequences. Note that the word disaster denotes separation from the celestial stars, even from nature itself, and by implication from the statutes laid down as calendars. Nothing is more primordial than this. So from this, we see that law's primordiality has to do with proper or fitting governance. I often dreamed of driving all law school courses having little to do with good governance out of the law schools and into the business schools, where they truly belong. I deeply desired to train a bureaucratic class, mandarins, or more properly, artist intellectuals, who simply wanted to serve good governance, executive, legislative, and judicial. Public servants, rather than those assisting private or moneyed interests, excited me the most. I discovered that as a society decays, its laws metastasize like cancer. As a Taoist, I knew that those who govern best govern least. I wanted a course in law school that focused on the limits of law. In medical schools, there are courses that explore the limits of medicine in the various specialities. I found to my surprise that when law was necessary, it was often ineffective. And when effective, effectiveness itself was better attained by other means, like alternative dispute resolution modalities. Okay, you might be asking by now for a simple statement as to my understanding of law. Here it goes. Law creates, maintains, or modifies, as well as dissolves, social bonds. I take for a concept that functions as a norm for fashioning or giving the law to be the idea of fittingness or accordance, and not that of rights or weighing of interests. Fittingness or being in accord is a social concept, somewhat akin to fairness, and not that of rights or the weighing of interests, which have their Sitz in Leben, seats in life in individualism rather than in the social. Rather than political science as a likely pre-law preparatory discipline for the study of law, I would suggest almost any other course of study. I would, however, make psychology and social psychology, sociology, the premier option. As in the learning of any matter, the first learning is finding out the stuff which makes up oneself. As Confucius said, one cannot govern oneself, is not fit or in accord to govern others. Aside from learning how to study law, students also will be learning the psychic stuff of which they are made, as well as discerning or intuiting the same of others, opposing lawyers, judges, and legislators. Now let me be embarrassingly personal. As I read the many testimonials provided to the Committee on Teaching Excellence at my university, I saw the profound level to which the students grasped the deep layers of the courses that I taught. And I was stunned to learn that they did so in ways which exceeded my very understanding of my own intentionality with respect to what I was attempting to accomplish in the classroom. In short, they, so to speak, came into their own voices, using what they were experiencing in the classroom. A teacher can never hope for more than that. While these are a few of the many insights learned, let me return to the wide scope of the Ledewitz and Taylor book collection before you. In teaching our classes, we read many books to exegete the one or several books used in each of our classes. It was a case of e pluribus unum. So you will see how thoroughly our books are frequently underlined, even with marginalia of abbreviated insights. Both of us are very happy to make this well-plowed intellectual soil available to future law students who enter on a journey such as ours has delightfully been. Bruce has been a real mensch and my abiding friend whom I admire very deeply. He insisted I read the whole thing.
Bruce wrote that part himself.
So I just want to thank the dean for this project. I want to thank Donna, of course, and Amy Lovell, who's cataloging all these books. I mean, these hundreds and hundreds of books, each individually cataloged, so they will be available to any future law students or citizens in our library collection. And as for myself, I can only say this. I think Robert's right about how students learn from him, because I began to come into my voice because of my work with Robert. And I very much appreciate that. And this is my chance to say thank you.
Here, here.
That an old decrepit dinosaur coming, please now. Naturally, I am grateful to the dean and to Donna and to Amy for their hard work and for Bruce, my eternal friend. I'm going to reveal a secret. Yes, people say I was a good teacher. I don't believe it. I was never satisfied with it. But I will reveal what I did value. And people do not know this. All right, let's start with the following. I'm going to talk about a bug on a rug. One time I was talking to my son, and the bug was crawling along the rug. He got up and he was going to kill it. I said, "Stop, Matt, stop. That bug's simply trying to make his way in a very difficult universe. And you're going to have to do that someday. Learn from the bug." With that, and he wanted to know where I got that idea, and I told him from the humanities. Kurt Junker, whom many of you know, one of my students, has reached the epitome of law in Germany. He is not only a professor in the University of Cologne, the second best university in Germany. It's Heidelberg, Cologne. And Kirk wrote in one of the books, the 3 books he wrote that's used in Europe regularly. He wrote, Professor Taylor taught us law through the humanities. And thus he brought into the humanities and into law the human being. He was near to this secret, but not entirely. He missed an item. And today I'm going to reveal that item. I have been psychoanalytically trained by one of the finest psychoanalysts that I have ever known, Dr. Rex Pittenger, with whom I studied at Western Psychiatric Hospital. I always believed, reading Lonergan and Ronner, that one had to be an anonymous and hidden Christian. People did not know my clients were judges, lawyers, clergy, but they came to me. I never intended to develop that clientele, but it was the doctors, the lawyers, and the clergy that taught me how to teach and how to reach human beings. I was assigned a case by Dr. Pittenger with a teenager with whom I had to work as a psychoanalyst. And then that was taped with the permission, of course, of the analysand. And then the psychiatrist would listen to the tapes and psychoanalyze me. He brought me to my true self rather than my bullshit self. In life, there are 3 degrees of crap: chicken crap, bull crap, and elephant shit. You gotta know at what level you're dealing. That's the key. And have to get free of all that. Be able to set it aside. That's the most marvelous journey that each of us have to take. We're like that bug on the rug, simply trying to make our way in a very difficult universe. So that's the secret. And I always went back to Socrates, where the humanities begin. Socrates said, Gnosta auton, seaton. Gnosta seaton. Know yourself. Explore yourself. Every one of you in this room has a true self. You're already enlightened. You just simply didn't know it. And let your friends and you and your spouses bring you to that true self. That's the task. And that's what I always wanted students to know. And the students who came to me for counseling after class were the real students I was teaching. I learned surprisingly, and it's the most touching of my life. I was at my urologist. You know, you read a certain age and you're, you know, it happened. Well,
What's
I
that
had
No. Stop.
was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. I have had 45 radiation treatments. So I was close to death, but I'm beyond the window now, 7 years beyond that window. But it's when you suffer that all of a sudden the false self, the BS self fades away. And I always wanted teachers, students to know that, as well as my friends. And I was standing outside the office of the urologist. I always like to be the first person while doctors are fresh and don't make mistakes. And there was another person standing against the opposite wall. We were waiting for the office to open. He kept staring at me and made me deeply uncomfortable. And finally he said, "Are you Professor Taylor?" I says, well, I was this morning when I got up. He laughed. He said, that's a typical statement. He said, but I want you to know you saved my life. At that point, he was called into the doctor's office. I didn't even know who he was, could find out. I asked the doctor, who is that? He said, I'm not supposed to tell you, but I will tell you. But I didn't tell you. But, you know, there's a Jewish saying, you save one human being, you save the world. That's the task that I wanted to communicate to students. But we can't do it unless we've first freed up ourselves. That's the key, freeing up the self. And I want to talk about that for a moment. I'll finish this in probably 5 minutes. Since my clients are essentially physicians, lawyers, and clergy, who do you think presented the most difficulty?
The clergy.
No, that's second. It was the lawyers. But my psychiatric group of clients, it was always the non-lawyer spouse, either female or male, that came to me and says, my lawyer husband or lawyer wife cannot turn it off at home. And I've had it. I've had it. Well, that made me curious. Well, that's why I came to law school. It was simply to find out what this creature, the lawyer, was like, so I could be a better counselor to lawyers. I didn't understand. Likewise, when I had Muslim students come to me, I had to learn something about Islam, so I joined their community to learn. This is the way you have to work. And I hope that each of you can find somebody, and if you can, learn psychoanalytic theory for yourself and start self-analyzing. That works too. But once you catch on to the method, you become free. Now, for example, I'll just give you one example in class. I taught students, lawyers are all mouth, right? That's how we make our business. We talk, we argue, we decide if we're judges. But language, we live in language. That's not where we're meant to live. We're to live deep inside, not in language. And the way I wanted to free up students to know about language, I would put those students capable of it on a language fast. Tell your friends so they don't think you're going round the bend. You won't be talking to them. Have a little notebook in your, whatever you're wearing, and with that notebook, tell all your friends you're not going to speak. But whenever you get the impulse to speak, write down a note of what you wanted to say. And you'll learn what Heidegger taught us, that most of the time we're engaged in Gerede, chit chat. And it's ephemeral, it passes. We're not meant to chit chat. We're meant to put the first authentic human being, starting with ourselves and then with our friends on this planet. We haven't had it yet. We're still fighting. We're still fighting. Israel, Ukraine, Russia, we haven't learned much, have we? And that's the dimension in which transformation in law takes place. People came to me, would want to be a leader. I would say, well, that's good. I'm in the back. Well, what are you going to lead them to? Well, no. I says, it's tricky. Remember, the leader is their Führer. You have to first lead yourself free, then you can help free others. I think that's my essential message. And I'll jokingly say your next hire should be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And you can get free counseling, right? But that's what unites the three professions: law, clergy, right? And doctors. That's what unites them. We're all forms of healing. We're counselors. Spiritual counselors, legal counselors, philosophical counselors, whatever helps. There are many schools. Learn those schools and then throw it out the door. You have to approach each person without an ideology and learn from that person. Listen deeply what they're saying, where they're hurting, where they're conflicted. This is so important that we love that we struggle with one another and help one another, like helping that insect trying to make a way in this cosmos. That's the task. And I thank you all for being here. I'm deeply touched. And keep up the good work. One more point. One more point, and I'll pass the plate around for I have to make a living somehow. I'm in retirement now. Fixed income. No, it's this. The French learned this. The only freedom is between institutions, not in an institution. If I said to you, when you asked how's your wife, and I said she's in an institution, what would you conclude? She's either in the slammer or she's in a mental hospital, right? Freedom is found in the transition of institutions. The trouble with institutions, students come, or we all come to get a certificate. What's this damn certificate for, called a diploma? To go to another institution to get their certificate. No. The French know that the real learning takes place between institutions, outside. Keep that in mind. Don't institutionalize yourself. John Rago caught on early for some reason. Surprisingly, that I demythologize the profession. That's right. One of the great Catholic thinkers by the name of Ivan Illich, a friend of mine, taught we must demythologize the profession. That's all I have.
So now I'd just like to adjourn us. And if you'd like to come around the corner to see the project, and also we have refreshments. Thank you all again for coming.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. My granddaughter.